Welcome to the Security Today podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Baer. It is brought to you by Sprinter Business Solutions at Sprinter Datacom on Instagram. You can check them out. We're back at it with another Bid2Bank. These things are rolling out in hot fire. We've got like 6 or 7 out now. So I just want to continue working at it and getting it out there. And today I am super excited because we got Frankie from Cicada Systems in Arizona on here. And I've been watching Frank for just a little while, running his his reels and posting his work, and he is comical and informational and down to earth, and that is like right up my alley. So I really, really am appreciative that you took your time out to get on this podcast today. But why don't you start by giving the listeners kind of an intro to who you are, and then kind of just tell me how you got into it. We didn't talk too much before we got on here.
That's a good thing, man.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate you even inviting me on. It's really cool. It says a lot. And yeah, I kind of just, when I post those reels and stuff, or mainly the stories, I like that they disappear, so just take you through
Yeah.
like the average real day that's going on. But my name is Frankie Salyer with Cicada Systems, and I got started in the industry with my dad. He's like, "Hey, I need someone to drive me around," and I was like, "Oh, I could do that because I got a license," and he didn't. So
Yeah.
I got into it. I just thought I was going to be doing art after that. So
Mm.
I just got
What kind of
hooked
art?
on it, and he taught me craftsmanship when I was a kid. So I started like noticing the art in what we were doing, and I'm like, people just saying, "Oh, good job on that." It kind of lifts your spirits. The other craftsmen, and especially the ones work hard. So I just
Yeah.
got kind of addicted to that, and then teaching someone else, it's just really cool, man.
Yeah. What kind of art were you into?
I drew for an art gallery in Tubac. So this guy, he gave me a chance. Another mentor. They like kind of pop up. It's not like you just go fill
Yeah.
out I need a mentor thing. So, um, but after
Yeah.
that, I started drawing for him, and I noticed that's kind of where the craft came in. Is the drawings he took from me? He put a nice frame on it. He put it in an environment, and he sold it for $500. That was just a drawing I
Yeah.
had. I was like, okay, so the presentation matters, the environment matters.
Mm.
So I kind of, like I said, man, I got addicted to that.
That's cool, man.
But
So you've always been out in Arizona?
yep,
Okay.
since day
Right
one,
on.
man.
It's hot out there, huh?
Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah.
But I can't do the
So
cold, so I get laughed at by people like from Boston, but I get to laugh in the summer. So
yeah. That's right. Well, that's cool, man. That's cool to hear because like I kind of started out in art too.
really
It was like graphic design and drawing and
nice,
and,
man.
and those sorts of things. And yeah, there definitely is. I feel like people don't take advantage of seeing from the low voltage side of how much of life plays into what we do.
Yep.
So just like you said, worrying about the presentation and treating it as an art, not just a science or
Mm,
a recipe,
yep.
then it definitely does that. So, well, I'm glad you're here, man, and that's cool. So, can you tell me a little bit maybe about Cicada Systems, like maybe how many guys you have or what the typical uh, type of work that you do is?
Uh, Rotate basically through a couple guys. So I have a couple guys full
Okay.
time, on and off, and then just 1099ing. So,
Yeah.
but because it's rough, man, you got to find someone. And I've talked about this with other business owners. It's like the security business owners I used to work for. It's kind of like, well, techs don't even know they're techs. Like you're saying, man, you're in art. So
Yeah.
it's like, well,
Right.
how do we figure out these guys are techs so they'll come here and kind of bottleneck it the other way around? Because there's just, when you introduce being a tech to someone, they're like, oh, I didn't know this job existed. So,
Yeah.
um, but, oh man, I don't want to mess up your question. What was it entire?
No, so yeah, that you're
Okay,
dude, I love it. I love the rabbit trails,
cool,
by the
man.
way. But from so Cicada Systems, you guys work primarily commercially? Do you do any residential?
Residential, not too much. I'll do it like mostly for, for general contractors like, hey man, I'm building my house or whatnot. We're on site and talking. I'm like, yeah, we can help out. But we do have a CR67, which is commercial and residential, so we can do both. And in Arizona, I don't know how it is elsewhere, but you have to get both at one time. So,
Mm-hmm.
but mainly focus on the commercial end, and that's kind of where I flourish because when I'm doing something in someone's home, you can't have your tool bag scraping up their grandma's, favorite dresser and stuff. So it's a
Yeah.
total different mentality in someone's home because that's their private life.
Yeah.
But
What sort of things does Cicada do low voltage wise?
access control, camera systems, fiber with fusion splice and all that. The networking side we pulled off, and I like doing that. If it's just some Unify stuff, but if it's going to get into Cisco or anything like that, we have people, and that's kind of the key is just to know the community and have people that can come in and fill in the gaps. And knowing your edge of competency is everything because you're like, I can't do that, but I do know someone who's an expert after that. You just hand it off to them or collaborate with them on that.
Yeah, definitely. You guys do something with cannabis, yeah?
Yeah, that was new, and it was a low voltage. Okay, we need some cameras, and we got to talking, and they're like, and access control. I said, oh, okay. And we just keep going and like, and alarm. Yeah, we can do alarm and monitor it for you. And then it was like, well, you got to do the low voltage growing stuff too. And I said, hold on a second. So I said, let me see the drawings and what you have. They were completely professional. It was from GrowLink. I looked through it, and it says you can't steal this page. You can't steal this. Like you can't copy anything. It's well protected because they put their heart and soul into those drawings, but they're very easy to read. So I was like, oh, this is easy. If you have your core fundamentals of anything, that's what I'll teach too. Is like just know these core elements, and you could build anything out of it. It's like having paint in a paintbrush. So
Mm.
I looked at that and
So those
thought we could do it.
that growing that growing I guess you would call it system, is it like lighting or is it watering or
It's everything. So,
oh
and
okay, whole nine.
yeah, and so what I'll do, and when I'm approaching someone, I'm like, "What do you want out of this?" And I'll work backwards into the process of just three stages: the input, the process, and the output. And when I'm with the client, I'll say, "What do you want out of this?" And I'll take it back and say, "Okay, can I do this process?" And then figure out the beginning. Okay, what's the input going to be? Because if you try to
Mm.
like build from the front, you can create a million different ways to get to the end. But as soon as they're like, all right, we need water, we need lighting, we need the CO2 sensors, and that's a multi-sensor.
Mm.
And then the fans were off the list. We're going to go back actually and put the fans on because they're on just a regular manual switch. But
Mm.
yeah, it just if you approach it that way, I'm speaking from my perspective too, and my mind is so sporadic. People will be like, "Well, I could do it a little bit better than he can." I'm proud of you, and you should take what I could do and do better. But
Yeah.
yeah, just looking at that, it was all or nothing. So we had to do the CO2 as well, the life safety, which is separate from the CO2 of growing. And as
Mm.
soon as that was incorporated, I was like, okay, we're in life safety. And I was like, well, I'm going to call my buddy. And when I called him, his name is Tom. He lives up in the mountains, man. He looks down on us peasants down here, and he just does the drawings for you. He used to be a nuclear physicist. And he's like, Frankie, you're overthinking this. He's all, this, and this. Submit this. And I was like, okay. Did it, and we pulled it off, and we're the first one in Tucson to do it. So it's pretty crazy, man.
Awesome. Dude, that's awesome. Well, let's get to the
You
Bid2Bank
got
kind of
me.
timeline here, if you will. So I like to start in marketing, and then we talk about the bid, project management, customer experience, the bank, the humbling question, and the bonus question.
Cool.
But starting with marketing, what's your most sold product or service, and when do you kind of interject it into a sales pitch of maybe, yeah,
Yeah,
go with
that
that.
it's got to be specialized skill because we're selling all kinds of different products, and you tailor to every different type of client. And
Mm,
so it's like, okay, if you can do access control and you can cut the locks and you know what you need to do, then that's kind of just that's where I'll flourish because anyone could sell the cameras. It's like, well, anyone can get their hands on them now. So I think if you shift it towards, okay, we're more skilled, and then I have a set of skills, and then you layer those skills, then you're able to sell the project with confidence. But a lot of the places I go in, man, and that's why I love you harping on Hike Vision. I'm like, it's everywhere, man. Like these,
yeah.
they're not going to do. That's like a layer one researcher. Like that stuff should not be in your building, um,
Hmm.
but yeah, the that stuff, and well, generally, I'm incredibly bad at sales pitches, so I
Yeah.
just avoid it at all costs, and you'll get more of a genuine reaction, or people will vent to you about problems they're having in casual conversation. So
Hmm.
that's when it's like, well, yeah, we can handle that for you. So if I'm going into a sales pitch, I'm in desperate mode probably at that point. But as far as that stuff, like, I was talking to my wife about this stuff, and she's like, when someone's coming in the sales pitch, you're like, all right, they're going to withhold things, rightfully so, because they're like, what is this person going to sell me? And what are, I don't want to say X because it'll be used against me later. So it's kind of like talking to a fighter in the ring versus out of the ring. When they know they're in the
Hmm.
ring, it's like, okay, we're boxing. When they're out of the ring, your casual self.
Yeah, definitely. Do you how do you usually get leads?
It's been word of mouth, and it wasn't like that the first year. The first year, I was banking off of my reputation. So
Hmm.
I called as many people as I could just to let them know I'm in business. And then I gradually got some calls, and do not remain stagnant. That's any advice I have. Don't remain stagnant. Work for free or at least to pay off the bills because you'll stay fresh. If you get stagnant, it just gets crazy. I've thrown tennis ball off of this wall. Like, what are we going to do? And but after that, once you can show what you can do, people just and you show up on time and do what you're going to say, you'll get jobs forever, man.
I meant to ask this at the beginning, but how many years has Cicada been in
Three,
service?
3 years.
3.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
And so when you were driving your dad around to do it, this was when you were younger?
yeah, I was like 18.
Oh, okay.
And so
Awesome.
yeah, I'm 37 now, so it was a long time just teching it out, and I can't let go of that either, man. It's just like I don't know. Everyone's like, "Well, you're still in the field." I'm like, "It's gonna be that way forever."
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's I think that's really common. That goes for me as well. I mean, I'm at a I took a path in my career
hmm
where I sit behind a computer more than I sit out in the field.
hmm
But man, any chance that somebody I know needs something, or if, I'm working for Sprinter now, if like there's a delay and they need someone to get out there and put it in and it's close to me, I'll take it
heck yeah,
because
man.
you can't not, you
And
can't not do it once you know the trade. I mean, it's like almost sewn into you,
yeah,
So
it is part of your
I
identity.
understand.
When you post those videos, just like you jamming through the computer program and stuff, I was
Yeah.
like, dude, you're in the zone. Like people that know when they seen that, they're like, I know what's going on there. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So when it comes to that marketing and sales, and you're getting it by word of mouth, and I like that. I like that you're highlighting that that you're selling that specialty service, because you're right. It seems in the CCTV field for sure, a little bit in the access. It's a little more technical, but you get these fly by night guys that are just, hanging and banging
Yeah.
cans and doing that. So being able to sell that specialty service, I think is really it's a really smart approach to it. So when you get that job and they've given you now it's time to like bid the job. How do you go about the bid process?
That's a great question, man, because I didn't know in the beginning, because being a tech, you only see one level. So when you got into
Hmm.
that, and you don't want to like poach other people's bids to see how they're bidding either. So it's like, all right, how do I stay moral about this? And how do I present myself at the same time? So um, the answer for me is have a beautiful proposal, because if you put your heart and soul into the proposal, like you should have a cover sheet. And when you have a cover sheet, your logo should be next to theirs. It puts it in their mind you're going to work together. If you
Mm.
have a comprehensive proposal going down, it's like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. And then they'll make an assessment. They'll just check that. It's a checkbox for them there, because they're looking at a bunch of bids. And
Hmm.
they'll hold your number at the end up to someone else's number. But if they know they're going to get something done and you're going to do it, I think, you have a better chance of getting it, because I'll talk to a ton of generals and I'm like, who do you go for? What do you look for? And Diversify, there's a gentleman over there, and he told me, well, we look for before and after pictures and the proposal, how clean it is, and how long they've been in business. Since that was held against me, that's why I was going off of reputation. I'm like, okay, I got to build
Yeah.
it. And at some point, I had to shift it from Frankie Salyer to Cicada, and that was hard, because you're letting go of, you know, your reputation that you built. So I'm like, okay, I got to slide this over at some point. So just like the proposal process, I did like a gradient of speaking instead of myself. I'd put my own logo against my own name, and then
Mm.
gradually shift it over and selling projects that way. But yeah, I'm sorry, man. You're gonna have to keep me in line, dude, on the questions. But
No, 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 no. This is perfect.
cool,
No, this is exactly what I want. Yeah,
cool.
for sure. Because I think when in this podcast, what people have been coming to it to hear is just those inner workings. Like that's a brilliant way to approach the bid is, to already start working on the social engineering of uh, almost sales, if you will.
Yeah,
Like I know that's also the bidding and proposal and quoting aspect of it, but it's almost like that sales line is is gradient in that it runs off into the rest of the job. It
yeah.
doesn't just stop at, oh, we sold it, okay, sales is done. You
Next,
still
my
have to,
yeah.
yeah, continue that. So that's perfect. So when you bid that job, in that proposal and you're looking at the numbers and stuff like that, do you use like a standard markup percentage on everything? Is it kind of tailored to every single site? How do you kind of handle that?
Definitely tailored, and you're gonna go on subject matter too. I got to shout out Lawrence Systems on YouTube. I don't know if you know that guy.
Yeah, yeah,
Man, dude,
that's good stuff.
he helped me out so much, and he on just data drops, because I was doing access. The data drops, he's like, just do it per
Right.
drop, a set rate per drop, and you might get excited if you have $300 per drop if you're using Cat 6. You're like, oh
Hmm.
man, I got four data drops on that one data drop. It's like, yeah, and it's 60 feet away, but you also have one, two floors above you that you got to run too for the same price. So that
Yeah.
formula, as far as that. But if you're running conduit, you're going to have, mainly three levels. So levels of difficulty. You'll say, okay, am I on the ground running conduit? Am I on a ladder, or am I in a lift? Those are
Hmm.
not the same. That 10-foot stick is going to be different there. But,
Yeah.
and then you incorporate the environment. So you're like, okay, I am on my feet running this conduit, but it's on the 10th floor. And is there parking?
Hmm.
You got to definitely, when the architect builds, he's not building for construction people to have a great parking spot, so
Yeah.
you're parking for, I
Oh,
don't know.
yeah.
Is it crazy in your city where you
Yeah,
are?
yeah. So Where I'm at is it's a very large suburb. So you can kind of like, if you're on I-35 and you're at the south end of the suburbs of Kansas City and you drive to the north end of the suburbs, it's probably about on the highway 45-minute drive with no traffic.
Dang, man.
So it's just like constant suburbs and buildings and office parks and this and that. And those aren't bad, but I did work service for a national security provider that we had a couple clients downtown.
Okay.
And yeah, you'd pull downtown and you're like, you park like you got to walk with your tools 6 blocks away.
Yeah. You look at a guy with a grocery cart, you're like, man, I need a grocery cart, dude.
Yeah, he's got the right idea. What about you there in Arizona?
It's flat, man. A lot of people put up laws to where you couldn't build tall buildings, so it's very flat. Downtown is a different world because there's no parking. You're in a parking garage. And being techs, you're like, I could fit under that. And I've seen a ton of guys get stuck because they're never downtown, So, yeah, it's crazy.
So you tailor it to every environment. And where in the bidding process, like what sort of factors cause you to maybe be flexible in your bidding? And where does that flexibility lie? Like if I'm going to, like I had a really good interaction with this person when we were going over the site survey. And so I'm going to cut them a little bit of a break. And then where would that break be cut? That kind of thing.
It'd probably be off of a relationship. If I'm like, all right, I know they took a chance on me. I'm going to, do a little free work, in there. But as far as flexible, it's crazy, man, because if you reduce the price, I just think you're doing yourself a disservice. You should be pricing it properly up front, because think about building a relationship with someone. If you put a bid out for $30,000 and they're like, hey, man, I could do 26, and you drop it, they're going to think subconsciously even, he was going to get me for $6,000, Like, even you doing a favor is bad at that point. So I would say do it right up front. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah. So okay, moving on from the bid. Do you use any quoting software when you put that proposal together? This was where my thought was going. It's also Friday. I'm at the end of that long week. I was like, oh yeah, that. When you put that proposal together, do you use quoting software, or are you using any sort of software to put it together, like Adobe or Canva.com or something like that?
Now, mainly everything's going to be finished up in Word, but then I'll create a PDF out of that. And these are great questions because people do not know. It's a wild west.
Yeah.
And
it is.
But before that, it's probably going to go through QuickBooks. I know a lot of guys do the Excel spreadsheet way, and they were telling me, I'm like, I'm not that smart, dude. Like, it's not gonna. I can't keep track of that. Plus, you got like 300 templates. It's like official template. You're like relabeling it. But the one I'm veering towards is there was two, because it does service as well. Tiger Paw. Are you familiar with that?
That is not one I've heard of, which
so
I feel like I have a good repertoire. So I'm curious now. Yeah.
So that one I'm going to look at, and that's the one I'm veering towards. But it doesn't seem to be like too crazy.
Like a platform, or what is it?
Yeah. And you go in, you enter your time, everything. It's like a time tracker. And since we do time tracking on QuickBooks, you do QuickBook Time. That slides over directly to the invoices, so that's nice. But I know it does have an interface for QuickBooks as well. So, but
okay, cool. Yeah. What was the other one you were learning towards?
I can't, dude. I was thinking, I cannot remember. I'll send it after.
I don't mean to ask you.
After it's important, I'll send it to you. But
yeah, for sure. That sounds kind of like some other ones that I've heard of, like Service Titan, or There's another one that I used to use, and I think Will at Stice Lock uses it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's good, man. That's good to get stuff implemented like that. Once you get to getting, a steady stream of jobs,
Mm-hmm.
something like that can really help
Yeah.
automate those sections. Because you're right, I look at Excel sheets too, and I'm like, I'm not this guy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. But so when it comes to moving along in the Bid2Bank, when it comes to the project management side of it, during that project management life cycle of they've accepted the bid, you've started to procure items, you're kind of scheduling out when you're going to be on site,
Mm-hmm.
you get out there, you put it in, you keep the job rolling, and then you eventually make it to invoicing. During that cycle right there, what are the two most critical moments in completing the job between that cycle that you would say?
I would say it depends on the size of your company and with getting down payments. Like if you're getting an initial deposit, you'll link your initial deposit with your scheduling. That way you're not financing every person you know during
Yeah.
building it. So it gets crazy, you know. So I'd say that, and I didn't write everything down because I didn't want to just have answers. That that and you have to get a plan together. If with your project manager, if you don't have a good plan, man, you're going to be in trouble, and they have to know that and know their numbers. You know, so I would say that because if you can't pull it off, if you don't have funding, you're not going to pull it off, and you're going to fail.
Do you use any tools or methods to like build that plan?
Mainly just experience, and there's a tool, and I'm going to forget the terminology for this thing, but it's the cone of uncertainty. Have you heard of that?
That sounds really familiar. I don't think that I've heard it in a while,
Mm-hmm.
but that does sound familiar.
So there's two ways to use it. One is like a time comes out of the cone and the cone goes this way. So all the possibilities come into the cone and things that bottleneck into the cone are probably going to happen. So you just try to see as far as you can out in there and then get a probability from there. You know what can happen
Hmm.
and just having a good plan. You know where are you going to drop off equipment? You know you'll have a loading zone. Okay, this is where we drop equipment off, or you're going to be lugging equipment down the street with your tools, you know. But
Hmm.
yeah, I would say just having a good plan.
Yeah, that's critical in that space. I'm not in the role of project management right now with Sprinter, but I was when I first started,
Hmm.
and it is just there's so many possibilities and so many factors
Hmm.
that you kind of got to prioritize, like which ones, like you said, are deep in that bottleneck that are more than likely going to happen,
Hmm.
and what are we going to do about those when they do happen, or is there anything we can do prior to them happening
Yeah.
to help with that? So I know that customer experience is something that I always like to hit on in these Bid2Banks, because I feel like, at least coming from like the old heads, of the industry, when it in physical security, especially because I came out of locksmithing, and definitely those guys, and then even like the old heads in IT that kind of grew up with this stuff in their career.
Hmm.
Um, I think that sometimes they get ahead of themselves, and they forget that customer experience strain runs from the very beginning of the job past the end of the job,
Yep.
because if they ever come back to you, or anything like that. So I love to hit on it when I do Bid2Banks, just because I want guys who are listening to this to be like, oh yeah, that needs to be a factor on every decision I make. So when it comes to customer experience, can you talk to the listeners about maybe one thing that you feel is most important when it comes to customer experience?
Absolutely, man. And it comes from the first moment. You know, I have tattoos here. I will wear, you know, a long sleeve when I can until the first hour when I meet the client. I want them to feel
Mm.
comfortable with me coming in, Don't have your music blasting before you get to the site. You know, when you pull up like that, it's you have to make them feel comfortable, and with almost like a butler. You know, I was studying this butler, and he had a butler, so it was like, okay, man, there's levels to this stuff. So, but just making them feel comfortable, being real and professional, tucking your shirt in and stuff like that. If you do what's
Yeah.
not being done like that, you'll stick out automatically. And then you do a good job, even when you mess up, they're like, oh, they'll let stuff go. But if you mess up and you were unprofessional from the jump, they're going to nitpick you to death, and
Mm.
your reputation is going to be ripped to shreds pretty quick. But I would say
Yeah.
just being real with them, and especially even when you mess up, be upfront about it. Hey, I messed up over here, but I'm going to take care of it. You know.
Yeah. When so you mentioned the mess up part, which I've done so many times. In fact, I'm gonna be a little vulnerable
Cool.
because it's you and I like you and I trust you, and of course everyone's gonna be able to listen to this. But when I was first learning to do cameras, my grandfather gave me the opportunity. He was like, I would love some cameras on my house, and I was running. I started out in locksmithing for a little while, and then I went on my own for a couple of years, running out of a van for like 2 to 3 years,
Mm.
and I was doing locksmithing stuff and access control, but there wasn't a lot coming in, in the first 6 months.
Hmm.
And so somebody asked me, "Hey, do you do cameras?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do cameras, no problem." I, I'd never hung a camera, but my once I did that, my grandfather gave me the opportunity, and I was in his attic and just not paying attention, and I put my foot through the sheetrock into his
Oh
kitchen,
man.
and he was very gracious about it. He repaired it on his own dime and everything. So I'm very thankful for that. But being that mess up spot, like when you put your foot through sheetrock and it's not your grandfather,
Yeah.
what what sort of approach do you take, or maybe demeanor do you have when a mess up has happened?
That story brings up another story for me. So, and this goes
Let me
back.
hear it. Let me hear it.
I was in this guy's house, and this is right when I first started. So, but I was working in substations, which when you're in there, I mean, they are jacked up. If you mess something up there, it's you fix it. But and I've messed up a lot too, man. So he's got his kid, his wife's not home, and we're upstairs, and he's watching me fish, and I'm pulling off some incredible fishing. Like even I was like, that was amazing. And I had this drill. It was right before I went to Milwaukee, and I can't remember. I think it was Makita. It was a Makita. I had my 4 foot bit, and I'm drilling down through the closet, and the bit just unchucks and falls straight downstairs. And we just heard ting ting through the whole house. I had booties on my feet. Like he did not want me to mess his house up. It was immaculate. So we go downstairs, and I'm just starting out. So that was a $450 job. And I looked at that and I was like, all right, you could just pay me 250 because I don't do tile. So he paid a guy to replace that tile. But yeah,
Yeah.
you suck it up, man, and you make it right. Like a ton of people will walk away, and you just got to make it right. I don't know. There's no other way.
Mm.
But that one was obvious. He was right there. But I haven't stepped
Yeah.
through a ceiling yet, though. So
Yeah. It was the only one I did, so at least
that's
I've got
cool.
that. I didn't have to learn it twice, but yeah, that's key too, and I feel like that is something on the podcast. I try to make sure that there's this tone of being the better technician,
Hmm.
and the guys that I have on here from Bid2Bank, I hand pick. I don't just like throw invitations out there because I want people who are quality, and people who are trying to be that better technician, and that's you, and that's the guys that I've
Appreciate it.
talked to. And one of the things that follows that strain or that follows that train of thought is that you make it right. You
Hmm.
do the right thing,
Yeah.
and it's rare, and I don't understand why, because I have felt in the moments that I've chosen to do the right thing, or to suck it up, or to save face and eat it at the customer's feet, you know what I'm saying, is like, in those moments I've never been met with like great agony. It was like I chose the right path, and it was never like, it's never come back to me that I was sued out my ass and my family lost my house, and like, that was never the conclusion. In fact, most of the time the customer like owns it, and it's like, okay, well, we'll just get it fixed, because you come to them with the idea of, this is the mess up, I already know what's that. And that's one thing too, is when I've messed up in the past on jobs, before I called my boss or before I called the client, I figured out what it was going to take to fix it.
Yeah.
Like, I already came
with the solution
to say,
dude, that is so rare. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, how are we going to fix it? Well, I haven't thought that far. I'm like, well, it's been 3 days. Like, you have no ideas. So that's cool, man.
Yeah.
That is rare. I'm not kidding. Like,
So,
yeah, that's cool, man.
but yeah, I think that just follows that strain of thought. You just make it right, and it usually turns out well.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
And you can even save customers off of making it right.
Yeah.
Like, you don't lose the customer off it.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving along though from the customer experience, when you come to the bank side of it and getting paid and invoicing, is there a payment method that you use to collect after a job's complete?
I'm glad you asked me that now, and not my first year again, man. I'm going to keep referencing that. So I thought, I had no idea. I'd seen everyone using, you just use, I forget what it's called, but you slide it on your phone, Stripe or something like that. And
yeah.
I forget.
Square. Yeah.
Yep. All these different methods, but QuickBooks is the most rare. But we do have that option because there's a quick pay as soon as you send the invoice. But check is the most used, I've found. Even the company we deal with, the national company in New York, that it's going to come in the mail. But just now, doing a job for an electric company, and they'll give you a check. But ACH, like the terminology, anyone getting out there, I got a book from an antique store. It says business terminology. That thing is like saved me so much, because we're all intuitive. We know what we're trying to do, but we just don't know the language. So when they said ACH, I couldn't tell you what that stands for right now either. But I know it's a wire transfer straight to your bank. So that's mainly what we'll do is ACH. The checks and then ACH.
When someone says ACH, what do they expect you to send them to get that wire transfer set up?
Beautiful question, man. You talk to your bank and you say, hey, I'm going to be getting an ACH, and they'll print out something for you. And then you submit that to the client, and that's your specialized numbers. Those numbers are going to be directly to your account. And I think they go out, I could be mistaken. It's in the morning, maybe around 11, and they'll do it around 3 or something before they close. And that differs between time zone as well. So you might get the money in a few days, or delayed a day because they sent it out after 11. So, but that was all foreign. You gotta.
Yeah.
And the business guys are like, what you got to do is you bill this way, you do this, you do that. And I'm like, I don't have enough information yet. Add up all your expenses, add this up, and you're like, what expenses? Like, I'm just starting out. So you collect some reasonable expenses, and then you add that up to figure out, okay, what is my business going to run off of, bare bones? And then you can add some stuff to it to make it special at that point. But when they were saying that, just the terminology. But ACH for sure.
Awesome. And then I was excited to ask you this question, because I know that you've demonstrated yourself as someone who, is kind of what I would call like the lifelong learner.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody who is continuing to try to learn, but not even just in one specific avenue. And I've appreciated that, because I've seen some of your reels where you're picking up books or you're picking up methods and you're trying to expand not just the physical side of it, but also the method, which is one of the reasons that I have such a passion in security,
Mm-hmm.
is because it is multi-layered in that a lot of people that I know and that I still talk to today who have been technicians for 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they they will talk to you and you will start to get into the method or the moral or the ethic or, you know, those sorts of weighty philosophical things behind just installing access
Yeah.
control, and their eyes just like spin.
Yeah.
They're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, so but I see that in you. So when you get that bank
Mm-hmm.
and you're making that good cheddar, what is one way to like, or how, or maybe multiple, how do you invest back into your company, which is also yourself?
Yeah. The tools, man. Like having the tools, knowing what tools to buy, but getting over the fear of putting it back in, and trusting yourself. Because before that, when you have it, you're looking at it as money, and then once your mind shifts to where you're indifferent to it, you're able to use it for fuel. I think breaking that mindset is huge at that point. But and yeah, I'm a lifetime learner, and that's I think you become a master and a student like simultaneously. As soon as you're like I'm the master because I'm a student, you're kind of like it's like really weird if you know you're humble and you're like yeah I'm humble. Well now you're not, so now you got to be humble again. So it's this weird rotation. But yeah, that as far as that the craftsmanship, like because I've been trying to differentiate what's going on because I'm a tech. And if you look it up, like technical, if you're technical, you can handle a procedure or process. But if you're a craftsman, you love the process and you care about the outcome. So I try to layer those two constantly. But like you're saying, being moral and doing what's right at the same time. But man, I'm gonna get off topic, man. You're gonna have to reel me
No,
back in.
keep going, man. Keep
Um,
going. We're already to the bank,
Cool,
so
man. So, yeah, I think, you go from the beginning, you're like, okay, I need this money, I need to grow my business. And then you shift to a point where you're like, what can I do? Like, I've already seen what I could do now. You start imagining, what am I going to do, at that point. And, and you got to have some goals in there too. Like, my ultimate goal is like to get to SpaceX and Tesla. And if I don't get there to do work for them, then I'm going to have that level. You have to believe in yourself that much. And
mm,
if you're building something, you're like, people will say, no, I did the best I could. Well, what if that part was going to be dependent on you making it to space? Would you take a little more care if that was on your spaceship? And they're like, I never really thought about that. It's like, well, you're not doing your best then at that point, you know.
yeah.
And I know I'm harping on that, but we've walked away from some work and it haunts us. And if it doesn't, they don't even understand this entire conversation then at that point because they're just
Mm,
getting in, get out, and but I could tell you care about the trade. It's cool someone has a platform and a voice of the industry because before you, I've never seen it, dude. No one cares. You talk about the psychology of it. You encapsulate things like the access control are not just going to be a badge on the door. The door closure has to work too. And that might be out of your realm, but that door, when
yeah.
you walk through, you got to picture a kid walking through, an old lady, or just an average user of that door. It needs to secure when you walk through. That care that you
Yeah.
put through that, I don't know, man. That shows a lot. It's comforting, man. Because when I seen you and three other guys, Jeff was one of them. The other two, there's Trican and
Maybe
then
me.
Technology.
Yep.
That was the first one.
Yep.
I was geeking out because I was like, these guys care. Like, no one's really caring, dude. So it was really cool to, like, I don't know, man. I was commenting a bunch of stuff and I was like, all right, dude, I'm like a fanboy in this comment section right now. So I'm just gonna take it back for a second. But it's just cool to see,
No.
man.
Yeah, that's good to hear, and I appreciate your comments, man. That it means a lot because it's a little hard on this side of it to tell. Like, I mean, I get guys like you, and I get a couple other guys that I know are listening,
Mm-hmm.
but those things, I mean, the podcasts like turn out like 70 listeners a week.
Okay.
So there's people out there
Yeah.
listening, and you know, I think that like all time for the podcast, I think I was looking at it the other day, it was like 6 or 7,000 listens. So people are listening,
Yeah.
but it's hard to tell if people are listening.
No,
You know,
I
like
know.
if they're out there.
But no, I think that's a better thing. And why I say that is you have a concentrated group. When people have like, you know, they got the huge following, they're not talking to the right people anyway. They might care and you might be entertaining, but your core
Yeah.
audience like means something. And I actually got that. You remember Alchemist, the rapper or
Yeah.
producer? He was talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, I have my core fan base. When I put something out, you know, put your heart and soul into it, and you sell your merch to them. You sell a good product first, you know, with the music and everything and that experience. I just felt that off him. I was like, man, that's true, you know. And everyone, I get calls and stuff, and I don't care if anyone's laughing. Oh, you only got X amount of followers. I don't really care. I interact with a lot of them, like over
Mhm.
50%. That's what I'm looking
Yeah.
for. I'm trying to teach the craftsman aspect and get an early exposure to them of quality because that will change the trajectory after that. To undo an adult, it's hard, man.
Yeah.
Because me and you are fighting our own habits. You're not going to fight someone else's habits for them, you know. So the
Right.
early exposure is huge. But I think it's awesome,
Yeah.
man. I hope you just keep running with it because I already love where it's at. Did I listen in Havasu? I was in Havasu and I threw my phone on the bed and I was just getting my stuff ready and everything. We were doing a project out there and it was like security today. And then when you said cicada, I was like, dude, that is the craziest thing. It's just so foreign to me. But it was awesome, dude. And I'll never forget that. That was the coolest thing, man.
Yeah.
So
For sure, man. And I want to reiterate too, just from like to show, you know, the quality of your character and the quality of people who actually make an impact is that goals aspect, and to push it and let yourself dream as far as you can.
hmm
Then if you get 60% of the way of your dream, you're still like 100% farther than everybody else who
absolutely.
wasn't out there dreaming.
Yeah.
And um, I appreciate you sharing. It was a little tidbit, and I think some people probably just listened over it. But your goal of being at that level of Tesla or SpaceX and working for them, that is excellent, and that is um, invigorating and motivating to hear.
hmm
I feel as if a lot of the guys that I interact with in the industry, that's not a talking point very often
hmm
when we're talking about where they're at or what they're doing is where they want to go. But like I also have big goals. I would like to globally speak on stages when it comes to security, and that's kind of what drives like the more corporate path of my career in sales engineering and you know the Security Today podcast and things like that. And I've applied just this year to two different conferences to talk at, which I
Yeah,
did
dude.
not get. They were big
Cool,
conferences
man.
like GSX. I'm like, I'd like to talk at GSX. They're like, who are you? I'm like,
Dude,
I have a podcast.
no, seriously,
But
man. And everyone's gonna be like, oh, he's all over him, you know, me saying this, but the voice, the setup, I was like, he prepared for this. I said, and he prepared, and then he left gaps for where he could fill it in for some other stuff. Man, that, I don't
yeah,
know, that's just, it shows intention. Like I showed, dude, I was with my phone, I was like, you know, we got mentioned on a podcast. And if you didn't sound official, you weren't doing official stuff on there. Dude, I watched people's
yeah,
faces when I was showing them lit up, man. It was
yeah.
just so cool, man. So no, you please keep going, man. Like
Oh
everyone
yeah,
knows in the industry, they're like, yeah, we need a voice, you know, for sure.
yeah. Well, yeah. So I appreciate that too. You said you were gonna turn this on me, and here you are.
Yeah.
I'm talking more about myself. But yeah, I think that that's critical, man. I would encourage the people who are listening and the people who want to be good at what they do that they would dream and that they would pick large goals. And the other thing is that like while real large goals like that, like I would like to be in the security industry long enough that I'm a prominent person in it and that I'm speaking across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
Those haven't really changed from when I started in the industry, but other bigger goals, they change all the time.
Yeah.
So just pick some, you know?
Yeah.
And it kind of starts you out on this journey to make sure that you're doing the best you can, because if you dream as big as you can, it's usually going to have to come with something that is a really high quality standard.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to eat better. You're going to have to move your body. You're going to have to wake up at the right times. And like those sorts of things will be driven because you know that you're going for something bigger than just being a wire rat and pulling cable 150 feet every day.
That's a great point too, because I was sitting in the van next to a guy, either I was driving, and they hated it. They were like 70 years old, and I was like, dude, that's going to be me. Like, I'm on that path right there. So I'm going to have to make some changes or elevate through the company or whatnot. And I landed at a company, I was like, I'm going to be here forever. I love the guy, older guy, believed in, he had high values and everything. Good people working there. But they sold the company, and that happens, man. And and that goes as far as business too. You have to be willing to adapt. Like I know me and you have those two goals. We know the landscape's going to shift on the way there, and we'll be ready for it. It's like, okay, because I saw an IP camera when I was doing analog, and I said that'll never take off, dude. I said the networks are crashing all the time. Well, the need for that camera to stay up, they're like, we need better networks, and I just didn't understand, the public at that point, what the power of the public can do. But yeah.
So one of my favorite questions, which this isn't going to be hard, I like to stick some guys with this because I don't think they think like this, but you're clearly somebody who wants to drive themselves to be humble and put in quality stuff. But what's one area that you think, and I mean 3 years is probably went quick.
Yeah.
And so you're at 3 years, but what do you feel like is one process that maybe the company is soft on, or that you're soft on personally and you'd like to get better at?
That one's easy. Change orders. I was too nice in the beginning, dude. It's like they got me again. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it just and being specific, in your proposal to have an exclusion up to this point with the information that we have.
You got me. I've never been got like that. I think sometimes you expect people to be like, well, I need that. You're like, change orders, man. I already know.
It's done, man, right there. Because at the end, you don't even want to do the math. At that point, you're like, let's just get out of here, dude. You got two black eyes, and you're just like, all right, man, we've had enough, so. Yeah. But you want to take care of them at the same time. But, the change orders and, being firm on them, that's not in the original plan. We planned per the plan that you provided, And if you have a drawing and you have the scope of work and your scope of work, you need to say what you're going to do in there. People will leave it vague so they can, feel a little free in there, or they're going to mess around. But if you're on the moral side, leave a little freedom. Just do what you're going to, do what you're going to say. And you say it in the proposal when you have it in there. And then you're like, hey, we're deviating from the original plan. That's not a bad thing. Sometimes they're like, we want to make some changes, And picking the right clients, man, that was probably the biggest lesson. I was like, I have done so much work for the wrong people. But if you work for the right people, everything runs smooth. And you're like, thank you for being a professional. I love working with fellow professionals, And that's what's hard. You'll try to, I'm going to keep it local.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'll just spit it out real quick. You want to stay local, but the local people are not acting as professional as the national companies. And the national companies have to run on a framework So it's hard, because I want to get back to my city, but all my money, is coming from New York, so
Yeah.
it's crazy on that. What were you going to say?
I was gonna ask, because I think that's a really good point that you want to work for the right clients. Do you think that you could detail like maybe just one or two brief things that you look for in a client when you're dealing with them really early on to know exactly how much you want to pour into that?
If I don't know them, the type of questions that are coming in, you know, and they'll say, "Hey, we're going to submit an RFP, a request for a proposal." I'm like, "Okay." I'm already gauging myself on how I'm going to tailor my approach. You know, it's not going to be friendly, so it doesn't matter. My relationship is out. So I'm going to tailor my approach and just being completely professional because they're going to have all the bids, scattered across a desk or a spreadsheet or whatnot at that point. So
Mm-hmm.
your proposal needs to speak for itself. I keep going back to that proposal, but it matters so much. I'll submit a different proposal to a client throughout the duration of a project. It might change because I'm like, well, this is better, and I'll just add it in, to my proposal and update it as we go. But yeah, mainly that.
Yeah, that's great. So the bonus question is based on your experience moving through this entire process that we've talked about from the bid to the bank, where do you think the focus is most critical in the completion of the job through the entire process? From tools to books to, or I'm sorry, that was reading another line. From everything,
Y'all
from everything
automatic.
that you go, yeah, from everything that you go through, where's your focus supposed to be, and what's most critical in that process?
It's two things. You got to have an overview, and then you got to have your finger on the pulse of it. So, like a Monday meeting, I don't care if you're by yourself. You're like, well, it's just me. I already know what's going on. Monday, you run down minutes and you do a minutes on yourself. Okay, what did I get done last
Mm,
week, and what am I going to be doing this week? If you don't do that, you're just going to be running, and you think just because everything's in your head, you're going to be able to get it done, and it just, and that's part of a weakness that I wrote down too is, my mouth will overload my clock. So I'll say, yeah, I could do that. And, I'm speaking from my heart, but my heart's not doing the work. My hands are. So it's like, okay, we got to get it all done. But just having, you know, you and I spoke briefly one time about a work breakdown structure. You have to have that as a roadmap because you need to know where you're at. If you're in the mall, what's the first thing you do? You're like, where are we on the map? You look right. Oh, we're right
yeah,
here. Oh, Dillard's is that way. So it's kind of like even when you take a picture, a group picture, picture everyone in it. It's like that's who's in the industry, but you always look for yourself. You're like, oh man,
yeah,
who am I standing around? Am I slouching? Am I uncomfortable? Why did I smile like that? And that's like you
yeah,
gauging yourself in the industry. You're like, next group photo, man, I'm going to go to the top, even though I'm a little shorter. I'm going to stand next to that guy over there. So, but yeah, just
yeah.
having that plan and the Monday meetings. Like I really missed that about certain companies I worked for. That just, it set you apart. You felt part of a team and, you
Hmm.
felt like killers. I worked for a company. I'm like, dude, when we come on site, like people knew, we were there to take over, and that crew has spread out. One runs the security for Banner Healthcare down here. The other is at Climatech. He went to locksmithing for the city. Like everyone elevated throughout that one group, and it was just really crazy to
Hmm.
see. And sometimes you don't know you're part of something until it's gone. But
Yeah,
it's crazy. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, Bear.
No, no, why you say sorry? No way,
Yeah,
man. That's That's the good stuff right there. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
There's no real topic to this. I tell them it's Bid2Bank, but I let it go wherever it needs
Cool,
to,
man.
you know. So, but well, that's awesome, man. And I just really appreciate your outlook on it. You're one of the guys that I watch on there. There's a lot of guys that I interact with, a lot of guys that I would call a buddy, but there's only a couple guys that I look at and I'm like, I would, if I'm doing work, I want to be doing work like them.
Yeah.
So I'm just I guess like honored that you would take time to get on here, and I really think that the people listening are gonna pull a lot from this interview.
Well, thank you.
You know, an interview like this.
And you too, man. I work alongside you any day, man. And
yeah, for sure.
I don't say that.
One day, for sure.
My list of I won't work with is a lot longer. So
yeah,
but
for sure. So why don't you tell them where they can find you, just in case. I always encourage the listeners to, like, if they want to reach out or DM, like I know that most of the guys that I get on here are friendly and they want to, you know, collaborate and hold community over competition. So
yeah.
Tell them where they can find you.
On Instagram, that's going to be Cicada Systems with an S at the end. And yeah, I love interacting with the guys on there. You got Jeff and Will and you, dude. Those stories are like always first on my list up top too, and it's just cool, man, because you know they care about it, and they and you care about it. It just, I don't know, man. It's like our girlfriend. You're like, no, you got to take care of her, you know. So, but it's cool, man. Yeah. But yeah, cicadasystemsaz.com is the website. Interact a little more on there. And then the Twisted Bit is coming, man. So finally found production for that. And
yeah.
But yeah, I'm real excited about that.
Tell me a little bit about it.
So,
like, how did it come to fruition?
Dude, we used to just get seismic wire and bend hooks on our drills. It was just a lot easier and faster because I could do 5 of those in the time someone's doing 1 or 2, chucking their drill.
Yeah.
And I was like, this could be a bit that I would keep in my box, you know, or a special place. And I created 10 templates. I'm like, okay, I need these. I actually talked to Steve from Door Jam. I said, hey, I got this project. That's a guy to talk to. You see what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, I'll put you in touch with someone for a patent, and but they're out of California. I said, I don't talk to anyone in California. So no, I'm just kidding. But after that, I got some real good people around me to protect my idea and everything. And just people, it's weird. You don't want to show it, and then you do. And at the same time, we'll probably be putting those out really soon for production. But to help the industry, I want to create a 3D model. And if someone could help me with that, just put it on my website for free. They could download it and 3D print it themselves. It's just, if you drop your drill or your impact, that's really when I started using it. I barely touch my drill anymore because all my impact bits are drill bits too. So I'm like, okay, I put my drill aside for a 4-foot bit or something like that. But that thing, it's helped me out, and a lot of people are like, man, that looks really clean. And I'm like, thank you. And I just have that bit talking to me in my pouch, like, tell them about me. It's like, shut up in there, you know, just like, we can't do it until we get the pad. So, but
hey, you have an Instagram page for it. So what's the Instagram page?
That's Twist It Bit, and just those 3 words. Okay. So, but yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, man, I'm real excited about that. I was excited. People are excited. Dude, I got so many messages flooded. I was like, okay, we need to step everything up big time, and just with the machine shop and everything. So I might just send some prototypes out to you, Will, and Jeff. Yeah. And you guys just tear it up, man. You know, see if it helps, man. I don't know. It helps me in the way I work, but I think it'll help out big time. But
yeah, I mean, it is that has been something that I've preached for a long time, is twisting your wires in the can, because it's cleaner. They sit better. I initially saw it probably like 7 or 8 years ago from Wire a Lot
Yeah.
on
Yep.
Instagram, and that guy can dress
Dude,
a
man.
can. Let me tell you. Woo!
I was like, because I swear, I said it on a story. I was like, dude, I thought I was the best, and I was like, he's got me, dude. And I hate saying that
Yeah,
because I'm very competitive, man. And I was
yeah,
like, what the heck is going on? Like, what is he doing? And it's not only that, he must be an amazing photographer. Like, it's
yeah, yeah.
crazy,
He knows
very crisp.
his photography, his
Yeah.
technology. Yeah,
So it's very, very
definitely.
cool. I love watching that guy. I was like, dude, he's sponsored by Tools. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
sponsored by Tools. So maybe he's wiring a little better than me. But yeah, you'll always get the guy, oh, you don't spin them because it's going to mess up the integrity of the wire and they'll fight you on spinning.
Yeah,
I'm like, this guy has no idea. Like, there's an edge to a cliff. You could spin it, and intuitively, if you could feel the wire, like in your whole
yeah,
body, you know when to stop. So before the integrity is
yeah,
damaged. So, but yeah,
yeah.
I do preach that stuff too, man, big time. So that's cool.
And most of the guys that are like you shouldn't spin your wires or they harp on all sorts of things, right? But you go look at their can, it looks like shit, man.
I'm like, you see that 30 foot of flex you got to your camera right there? Like, we could talk about that and then we'll talk about the wires.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But well, that's cool, man. Well, I hope that the listeners definitely give you a like and a
Cool,
follow
man.
and follow that bit because that's coming down the pipe. And I think it should be in every quality be the better text pouch. So
For sure, man. Thank you.
definitely. But thanks for coming on today, man,
Yeah,
and I really appreciate it. And we'll get back together on some sort of podcast. I've got some brain trust stuff about what I want to do with some other segments.
I'm all
So
in, man.
we'll have to have
For
you back
sure.
on.
Thank you very much.
But thanks again,
All right.
man. We'll see you later.
All right. Take care, man.